Missouri, 1980, Planet Earth. Meredith Quill, Laura Haddock, is in a car with her lover, Kurt Russell, whom she refers to as her spaceman, listening to music on the radio. They sneak behind a Dairy Queen and flee into the woods, where the man shows Meredith a small alien seedling that he claims will soon be all over the place. After that, he kisses Meredith. After 34 years. The Guardians of the Galaxy, including Peter Quill / Star-Lord, Chris Pratt, Gamora, Zoe Saldana, Drax, Dave Bautista, Rocket Raccoon, voice of Bradley Cooper, and Baby Groot, voice of Vin Diesel, are standing on a platform, attempting to obtain Anulax batteries from their latest employers, the Sovereigns. The Guardians have their weapons ready as they prepare to face the Abilisk, an interdimensional beast. The Abilisk descends, prompting the Guardians to leap into action, with the exception of Groot, who is rocking out to Mr. Blue Sky on a speaker set up by Rocket, all while the others are attempting to destroy the Abilisk. Drax eventually falls on the speaker, much to Groot's chagrin. Drax attempts to kill the Abilisk from within by allowing it to consume him because they cannot damage it from the outside. Star-Lord spots a cut on the monster's neck and commands Rocket to make it look up. Gamora then slashes the Abilisk downward, killing it and allowing Drax to escape through the hole. The Guardians return the batteries to the Sovereigns and meet with Aisha, Elizabeth Debicki, their High Priestess. In exchange for the batteries, the Sovereigns give Gamora's sister Nebula, Karen Gillan, to the Guardians, who transport her to Xandar and collect the reward on her behalf. Before they leave, Aisha speaks down to the Guardians, namely Peter, saying that his half-human / half-alien parentage gives him something she considers reckless. The Guardians depart, with Rocket stealing some of the batteries. The Guardians are on their journey to the planet Xandar when they are abruptly met by a fleet of Sovereign drones, all of which are chasing the stolen batteries. The others believe Rocket kidnapped them, and they're all furious. As Rocket attempts to direct the Milano towards a wormhole that will lead them to another planet, the drones begin attacking. Another craft passes by in the distance and begins to destroy the Sovereign drones. A man emerges on his ship, waving to the Guardians. The Guardians manage to escape the drones but are forced to crash land on a nearby planet. The second ship that saved them descends as the Guardians examine the wreckage of their ship. Ego emerges, revealing himself to be Peter's father. Mantis, Palm Clementif, his empathetic aide, is with him. Yondu Yadanta, Michael Rooker, and his Ravagers have fallen on hard times on another world. He's staying at a nearby hotel, where Howard the Duck is also staying. Yondu runs upon an old friend, Stakar Ogord, Sylvester Stallone, who has exiled Yondu from the Ravager crew due to child trafficking. Taserface, Chris Sullivan, believes the Ravagers need a new leader, as does Kraglin, Sean Gunn, who has since started to mistrust Yondu's leadership. The Sovereigns arrive after Yondu finishes speaking with Stakar, and Aisha approaches Yondu with a proposition. Peter is still in disbelief that he is finally meeting his father. Ego adds that after Peter's mother died, he dispatched Yondu to fetch him up. Peter is also perplexed as to why Ego abandoned Meredith in the first place. He invites Peter and his buddies to his world, which Peter declines until Gamora persuades him to accompany his father. While Peter, Gamora, and Drax accompany Ego and Mantis, Rocket and Groot remain behind to repair the Milano and keep an eye on Nebula. On Ego's spacecraft, the three speak with Mantis, who demonstrates her abilities by seeing into their minds. She informs everyone that Peter has sexual affections for Gamora, which Drax finds amusing. The Ravagers arrive in the woods where the Guardians have crash-landed. Most of them end up walking into Rocket's traps until Yondu appears with his Yaka arrow controlled by his whistling. The Ravagers capture Rocket and Groot, but when Taserface intends to get Peter, Yondu is less inclined to hand him over. Nebula then fractures Yondu's crest, knocking him out. She joins the Ravagers in their capture of Rocket, Groot, and Yondu. Because Ego is a celestial and his awareness is the core of the globe, he invites everyone to the planet that actually lives through him. He explains to the three that he created a human shape in order to tour the galaxy, and that he arrived to Earth and fell in love with Meredith, but that he couldn't see her very frequently since it would consume a lot of his energy. Peter still harbors resentment against Ego for abandoning Meredith to die.as Peter's emotions become stronger, his hands emit powerful energy that is linked to Ego's own power. Ego teaches him how to regulate and utilize it. Taserface and his goons begin ejecting all who remain loyal to Yondu on the Ravager ship, except for Kraglin, who merely watches in disbelief as his companions are slain. Rocket mocks Taserface as he brags about his excellence and fearful name. Nebula appears and recommends that the Ravagers hand over their hostages to the Kree in exchange for the bounty on their heads. She also demands a new hand, among other things. Kraglin transports her to a ship, which she uses to escape the Ravager and find Gamora. Mantis and Drax create a bond, despite the fact that Drax continues to tell Mantis that he thinks she is awful, which is a good thing because he believes he is hideous as well and still managed to find someone who loved him for who he is. Mantis says she needs to tell Drax something vital, but Gamora interrupts and Mantis remains silent, instead escorting the two to their own chambers. The Ravagers imprison Rocket and Yondu while capturing Groot for their own amusement. Yondu mentions being a Kree war slave before Stakar kidnapped him and turned him into a Ravager. When Rocket questions Yondu about why he kept Peter around, he claims it was because Peter was small enough to fit in places where the others couldn't. They then decide to work together to get out of there. They summon Groot, and Yondu instructs him to obtain a prototype fin for his head. Yondu gets his fin and gets himself and Rocket out after bringing a variety of incorrect stuff. Yondu throws the arrow into every mutinous Ravager they come across, and Rocket and Groot join in on the ass-kicking. The three board an escape spacecraft with Kraglin, but not before Yondu blows up the entire ship. Taserface is hit by flames, but he manages to alert Aisha to Yondu's whereabouts before collapsing with the ship. To reach Ego's planet, the other four must make 700 jumps. Back on Ego's world, Peter attempts to woo Gamora with his dance talents, but it fails since she is unable to express her own interest to him. After she departs, Gamora notices Nebula approaching her spacecraft and shooting at her. Nebula gets out of the plane and begins attacking Gamora. Nebula defeats Gamora but explains that she never wanted to show herself superior to her, only to have a true sister. Gamora's success as a fighter led to Thanos mutilating Nebula, which fueled her animosity of Gamora. When they come upon a cavern filled with around 100 skeletons, the two form a sort of alliance. Peter and Ego are still close. Ego assures Peter that he will keep his powers and immortality as long as there is light on the earth. Mantis notices that Ego has Peter wrapped around his finger now that he is aware of his own abilities. She rushes to rouse Drax and inform him that Ego's true intentions are now evident. Rocket, Groot, Yondu, and Kraglin arrive at their destination safely. Rocket begins to gloat about wanting to save Peter merely to prove he's better than him and can hang it over his head, but Yondu cuts him off by noting how afraid Rocket is and how he puts on the strong guy act as a ruse. They then went out to confront Ego. Ego informs Peter that he intends to create the expansion. He traveled throughout the galaxy, planting seedlings to increase his dominance over the galaxy and blanket the planets in an extension of himself. He impregnated women from other worlds and bore many offspring to him, but when they did not have the same ability as a celestial, Ego had them slain, and their bones are what Gamora and Nebula discovered. Peter just happens to be the person with the power that Ego was seeking for. Ego also admits that he implanted the tumor that killed Meredith in her brain so that he would not suffer the agony of being absent from her. In a fit of rage, Peter breaks out of it and begins unloading his firearms on Ego. In reaction, Ego seizes Peter and commands him to begin spreading the seedlings across the worlds, inflicting widespread devastation. Ego then destroys Peter's Walkman and Awesome Mix Volume 2 that his mother had left him. Rocket, Groot, and Yondu join Gamora, Drax, Nebula, and Mantis in their efforts to stop Ego. Unfortunately, they are also confronted by a fleet of Sovereigns intent on killing them. Peter battles Ego's human form, but his entire planet's self defends him. Mantis can put Ego to sleep while the Guardians look after the others. They fight back against the Sovereigns, finally destroying their whole fleet with lasers. Meanwhile, Rocket constructs a bomb out of the stolen batteries, which Groot steals and flees with, ignoring Rocket's warning that if he presses the wrong button, they will all perish. A fireball knocks Mantis out, releasing her grip on Ego and reawakening him. As the others attempt to flee, Ego begins to swallow them. Peter uses his celestial powers to continue fighting his father. Groot, now free, locates Ego's brain in the planet's core and detonates the bomb in 5 minutes. Drax transports Mantis to the ship, as Gamora and Nebula return. Rocket gives Yondu his last spacesuit, knowing he can't save both him and Peter. Gamora attempts to return, but Rocket stops her so that he does not lose another buddy. Ego begs Peter to defuse the bomb, or else Peter will become a normal human. Peter sees no problem with it and lets the bomb go off. As the rest of the Earth begins to erupt, Ego's human body disintegrates. Yondu flies by, grabbing Peter. Yondu puts the suit on Peter as they leave the planet's atmosphere to save him. He informs Peter that, while Ego was his father, he was never his biological father. Yondu then begins to freeze in space, and Peter is forced to watch him die. The Guardians are preparing a suitable Ravager funeral for Yondu. Kraglin gives Peter a Zune to compensate for the loss of his Walkman, which Yondu had been intending to gift him for some time. In exchange, Peter gives Kraglin Yondu's arrow, believing that Yondu would have rather that he take it. Nebula sets out on her own hunt for Thanos, but not before reconciling with Gamora. Mantis chooses to remain with the Guardians. The Guardians watch scores of other Ravager ships arrive to pay their respects to Yondu as his body is released into space. Following our 5 end credit scenes, Kraglin practices with Yondu's arrow. He doesn't quite get the hang of it, and he ends up giving it to Drax. Stakar pays tribute to Yondu's sacrifice by assembling his own team, which includes Martin X Naga, Michael Rosenbaum, Charlie, 27, Ving Rhames, Starhawk, Michelle Yeoh, and Mainframe, Miley Cyrus. Aisha and her Sovereign chambermaid discuss their new strategy for eliminating her foes. Aisha can be seen sitting near a birthing pod, ready to release whatever is there to use against the Guardians. She names her new creation Adam, as in Adam Warlock. Groot has reached adolescence. Groot mocks Peter and plays video games while Peter chastises him for leaving his roots laying around. In his compulsory cameo, the elderly Stan Lee is sitting with the Watchers, discussing his prior experiences, but they become bored and leave him.